Can it run Doom? A question that lots of people have asked. This 1993 game has been run on an Apple Watch, graphing calculator, a printer, and even a pregnancy test. But can it run on South Park? That made no sense. What I really mean is, what would Doom with South Park graphics look like? There have been several iterations in the Doom franchise, but I don't think any of them have been able to top the 1993 game that started it all. It was really the first game to make people realize that PC gaming actually had some advantages over the original consoles, and it was truly revolutionary. But also, it was made in 1993, and in the last 30 years, game development has come quite a long way. So, making something similar to this these days should be trivially easy. I mean, I don't actually know. I don't know anything about making games, but I hope it is. But first, I need to make a plan for the levels. Obviously, Cartman is going to be the main character, not that it will change much, basically just have his yellow gloves for the hands. As always, Kyle would be the enemy, because we all know Eric would do anything to get at him. The original game features a lot of generic corridors and a few outside areas with more space, so the most logical South Park equivalent would be the school corridors. The other levels can feature other parts of the school, like the cafeteria and the school itself. Other than that, there isn't much to plan, so let's get into it. I could spend a week coding the base game mechanics, but that would be boring, and frankly, I don't want to deal with fixing bugs and end up smashing my monitor. So instead, I will be using Ms.Zz's Tutorials basic first-person shooter game model, which I can then retexture and add extra features to. The original came with a nice feeling movement and all the enemy sprites pre-coded, but there is definitely a lot more to go. All of the assets will be made in Blender, because I already have a lot of 3D South Park models. Oh yeah, the game is being made in Godot. Forgot to mention that. I animated Cartman's hands using this free model that I found on CD Trader, and even made a custom gunshot model to show when the hand is first raised. I also animated this model of Kyle to have an idle walking animation, as well as something to show when he gets hit. I could then export these frames and turn them into a texture for the sprites. Now it looks like this. Yay. Wait, what's that in the background? I also imported a model of South Park Elementary and set up collision detecting so that you can't just walk right through it. The Godot system for importing models was kind of confusing at first, because you would assume that models would be treated as solid objects, but unless changed, they are just textures applied to an invisible mesh that can't be interacted with. Very strange. Now that I've fixed the original, I can start adding everything else. A few months ago, I made a South Park episode that featured the school corridors, which means I already have all of the 3D models I need to make the textures for the first level. I rendered a few slightly different wall tiles which could then be repeated, and it was working really well, until I playtested it, and it both didn't look good and let me walk through them. Wait, what's that? That's a strange place for a good piece of advice. Even though the original Doom uses textures for the walls, I think I'm going to have to make a version of this with actual geometry, because that will just lead to a better end result. Also, we're not stuck in 1993 anymore, and our computers aren't complete dog shit. I decided to make all of the geometry really flat, so it doesn't look too different to the original. This is the final layout, and it even has some dark sections where you can't see anything. I imported the model and then applied all of the collision boundaries to the walls so that you can't just walk through them anymore. And by the way, I have a bone to pick with Godot. Why the fuck, when I view my 3D model, is it in orthographic perspective? What is wrong with you? This is what it looks like so far, and honestly, it's kind of okay. I went into the code and changed the movement speed, because everyone knows that the easiest way to make something fun is to make it fast. Like driving a car. It's boring until someone is driving fast, or they crash. I also changed the speed that you can shoot, but to counter it, I also gave the enemies health. Basically, it takes 2 shots to kill the enemies now. That's enough for the first level. Let's start working on part 2. But before that, just check if you're subscribed, because I think that'll be cool. Thanks. Unlike the other places, I didn't have a model of the cafeteria yet, so I made this pretty simple room with all the tables and even some cool looking vending machines on the side. Then making the rest of the levels pretty straightforward. Just add all the characters and it was done. You spawn in the middle of the room, and you are immediately surrounded by Kyles who all want to eat your fat body. Something I did with both levels to make them feel a bit more dramatic was add these spotlights that make some cool shadows and just give off some scary abandoned place vibes. The actual Doom looks a lot more pixelated than this, so I added the shader to slightly lower the resolution. I still needed a way to choose both levels, so I made a simple starting screen where you can select a level by pressing the number on your keyboard. Please just ignore the fact that Kyle is in the background burning in hell. It's irrelevant. A few final changes like adding an actual crosshair, and now everything is done, and it's time to speedrun it. The first level went really well, as there isn't much technique. You just run down the corridor and make sure you don't get hit. No weird strategies. But level 2 has many different approaches. You could try to get to one corner and let them all come to you, or you could run around while trying to hit your shots, which I think is faster, but much harder. Made even worse by the fact that there are so many different enemies that even my PC, which has a 3060, slows to about 3 frames a second when I try to play this level. With all that said, I managed to finish it, and I got a time of just under 44 seconds. Thanks for watching, and check out this video on screen now.